welcome to episode 4 of the Living Memory Association's Away for the Messages podcast, recording reminiscences and experiences of Edinburgh's shopping and retail heritage. In part 1 of this episode, we hear from Ruby Suggitt and Heather Henderson about their lived experiences of the shops in the Craigmillar and Niddrie district of the city. Heather recalls the variety of shops she remembers in this once busy industrial enclave of Edinburgh, famous for its breweries, mining and an ice cream factory, now all gone. She goes on to describe the shops in the community now and how they reflect contemporary needs. But first, we hear from Ruby, who recollects her retail experience in the area during the early 1960s. So join me as we go down to Niddrie Mains Road, away for the messages.
We had several different types of shops. We had a St Cuthbert store on our main road, and we had chemists. We had grocers, lots of private grocery shops. We also had a dry salters, a bank, and some drapery shops too.
Could you get everything pretty much that you needed locally?
Yeah, we could get pretty much everything we needed around. However, if you needed things as we did in those days, records, we had to go into town or into Leith. But other than that, yes, you could get almost everything you needed. More into my teenage years, I would go into town to shop, C&As, etc.
You worked in a shop for a while in Craigmillar. Can you tell me about that experience?
Yes, when I was 16, I started to work for a shop called Cunningham's Drapers. This was owned by a gentleman called Thomas Cameron, who had 6 shops, one being a big gowns and mantle shop in Portobello, and the rest all small type drapery shops. However, the one I worked in was 2 shops made into one, so it became quite a big shop. I started there, as I say, I was 16, and we were in those days required to wear a certain dress code, which was black skirt, black cardigan and white blouse, black shoes. And my days there were very happy. I was there for 6 years. We served most of the community. We also had a fairground opposite. This is one of my memories. It was called Taylor's Amusements. And Mrs. Taylor would come over every Christmas Eve with bags and bags of threepennies and sixpences and spend maybe, which was a lot in those days, maybe £20-30, and we had to count that out in threepennies and sixpences. And we expected her every Christmas Eve. So she was a very special customer. Another special customer was a lady who lived in the Thistle Foundation, which is for war disabled people. And this lady had a visit from the Queen. So she came in for things to put over her chair covers, things like that, table covers, all the nice bits and pieces she needed for the Queen. And I had to go along with them to her house to deliver them, etc. So yes, we had some good times. We worked hard. We were very well trained.
Tell me a little bit about the kind of training that you had.
Yes, we had elocution lessons at night school, and we had window dressing at night school, which was all very good. And we had in-house training was more how to deal with customers, and customer always came first.
You said you worked there for 6 years.
Yes.
What period was that?
It was 1960. Yes, 1960 I started. I left in 64 to have a baby, but I carried on after that for helping out, etc., for a few years. So probably more than 6 years, but over the years, I would say about 6 years.
And the shop is still there now, isn't it?
It is, and it is as it was in 1961 when I joined. Very little has been changed.
Can you describe what the interior is like, just from memory?
When I started there, it's changed in as much as it's more, they sell a lot of wool, knitting wools. So the frontage of the shop is now, the shelves are all covered with wool. In my day, it was all ladies' jumpers and blouses, and they were in racks. And we had to take, if we had customers in as we did on a Friday for people going to dancing, etc., every jumper, every blouse had to be brought down singly for them to view. And if we couldn't find what this customer wanted, we were then sent with a pair of step ladders to go right to the top of the shop and boxes and get them all down. So yes, it was very customer based.
It sounds like it was quite physical work too.
It was. We were young and it was good. It was physical, but it was good. And you got energy when you got a good sale because you got commission on your sales. So so it made you work that wee bit harder.
You mentioned to me that wasn't your first experience of retail, that you had another before you went to work for Cunningham's. And can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, when I left school, I was interviewed at 92 Fountain Bridge for St Cuthbert's Groceries. And you had to then sit an exam, which was English and arithmetic. And of course I passed and I got a job, which was in Dalkeith Road, and it was personal service grocery, no self-service. Again, we were dealing then with the big sort of guest houses on Dalkeith Road who bought all their groceries from us. And these all had to be made up. It wasn't really my scene, groceries, and that was the reason I changed jobs to clothing, ladies, children's, babies, etc. So my time in St Cuthbert's was quite good as well. As I say, it was disciplined. We had to wear overalls. We had certain jobs that we had to do and carry out every morning, sweeping up, etc. So it was a different experience.
The role that you had, it was specific to you. You weren't expected to do other things.
Well, it was because it was personal service. You had a queue of people, so you just had to stand at the counter, and of course everything was written down. You had to mark all the prices down. It wasn't done by the till, so you had books that you had to keep. You were kind of bookkeepers as well, and your books had to tally, or you were out of pocket. So yes, the boss wouldn't let you go until your book tallied at the end of the day. Every single thing that a person bought in personal service had to be written down and totalled up and given a cheque. Customer got a copy.
So it actually sounds like quite a strict working environment in a way.
Yes, it was. Yes, very disciplined.
Can I just ask you one final question about how you feel about the way you worked in retail and the expectations that were set by shops then and now? How does it compare?
Some shops get it right nowadays, but quite a lot have forgotten the customer, I have to say. You just don't get the service that we had to provide. That's the way of things today, and we have to accept that, but it becomes quite a wee bit annoying when you go into a shop and you find you're not getting the service you would give.
And finally, you shared a photograph of yourself outside of Cunningham's, the Drapers. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that.
That was 3 days before my wedding, and it was my hen day stroke night. It was our half day, which was a Wednesday, and the girls all found these old dresses stacked away in the back of the shop, old wedding dresses, and lo and behold I got one put on and covered it in balloons, etc., and took pictures outside the shop.
I imagine that the people on the street, there was quite a crowd looking.
Yes, all the wee boys standing there just looking at us, and there'll be people in that picture that are quite old now.
Thank you very much for sharing your memories with us,
Not
Ruby.
At all. Thank you.
The only messages I was allowed to go for was the shops at Greendykes, because we lived in the Greendykes Masonettes. And there was a butcher shop, there was a baker's, there was a post office, and then eventually there was an Asian shop. It was like a wee mini store. So the post office was run by a husband and wife, and it was like a newsagent's as well with the post office. And you could go in and buy your wee stamps to save up 10 shillings. You could save up your 10 shilling book to go and buy Christmas presents. You could buy like presents for your mum and dad for what's now called 50p. But when you bought your wee stamps and you put them in your 10 shilling book, it was a big achievement to fill that 10 shilling book. But they, in that newsagents, also had like your Jerseys, old fashioned Jersey sweets and that, so you could get everything in that newsagents. And then we had a dry shop where you could go in and buy wee bits of clothes and things like that. Then we had the bakers, and then the butchers was at the end, and it was like a tiled floor with all the sawdust on it. And my dad, first, before he went on to the other jobs, when he first left the Air Force, he was helping build the Greendykes flats. So sometimes if you would go to the shops, you would hear him shouting me and my other two sisters' names, Mary Faye, Heather, and we'd look and they'd be away up at the top and they'd go, get me a pie, be at the baker's for my dinner, and we'd go and buy him a pie and take it up to him, and then we would go back. But to do the big shopping, we would chum my mum along the main road, which was loads of chains of shops. And my granny, my dad's mum, lived up in the Craigmillar, so you would go along and you had your butchers, you had your bakers, you had your fruit shop, everything. My mum would just go in and out, all these different shops. And then you had Peggy Duncan's, which I think she was Nan Cunningham's sister or sister-in-law. And then there was a brother who, you just had the Drysdale shop. You would go in there and you would buy your anything for picture hooks, to fuse wires, to fuses, it had everything. You would then go along to Nan's and Nan's would be the bigger shop. Like you could get skirts and everything out. My mum bought all her aprons there. But you also could buy your wool there. And the good thing about Nan Cunningham's is like my mum had 6 kids. So you didn't have to buy all the wool at the same time. You would just go in and pick what colour you wanted, what pattern you were doing, because you bought the patterns for there as well. And then you would tell Nan how much wool you wanted. It would go put in a bag. My mum's name, Famie Milligan, would get put in it. And if you bought 2 balls of wool, it'd be deducted for the total. And then that's how Nan's done it. People could just buy their wool weekly as they could afford it.
Do you feel that the shops that you grew up with knew their customers and knew the community better?
Oh yeah, well a lot of them even come from that community that maybe worked in the shop or helped in the shop. But Nan's Cunningham just knew us all, and like I said earlier, her sister Jean was a Provy woman, so everybody just knew everybody back then. And it wasn't you weren't called by your first name. If we walked into a shop, the butcher's, it would be, "Morning, Mrs. Milligan, how are you the day?" So everybody knew you, how's the bairns. You had your Lucas ice cream, where you could go in and get ice cream, or you could get your sweets. Sports mixtures was my favourite. The other end, near what's now the Doctors, when I was wee, the Doctors used to be a garage, and next to it was a shop, and that was a good shop to go and get your rolls. But when I was young, just slightly, I can still remember the Big Walls ice cream factory, but that's now all the chemist and everything. But the shops came and went. But Nan Cunningham's, Becky Duncan's and the Dry Salters stayed there forever. They didn't close until they died. And then even when Nan died, Nan's brother took over Nan Cunningham's, now Alan Cunningham's, but people still call it Nan's. He also now sells the stuff his brother sells, so you can still get picture hooks and picture buying, and a lot of them closed because the stores come in. We ended up getting a St. Cuthbert store, which is now run by Polish people. You still had an Asda, but the Asda was near Magdalene side before it moved to this great big massive superstore. So my mum had got a bus down to it. Didn't have the car parks it has now because most people didn't drive.
So when these big boys, if you like, came in, your Asdas and what have you, do you think that it definitely changed folks' shopping habits?
Well, it totally affected the wee local shops, and it changed people's way of shopping. My mum still liked going in and out a lot of shops, and even down near Craigmillar Primary School, if you were going to school, the Combsy's was there. Combsy's was there for years. It was a mixture of sweet shops and newsagents. Next there it was a butcher's, and across the way there was an Asian shop. And then eventually when the butcher's shut, it became a house. They made it into a house. There was a big industrial place here as well, further along near Peffermill. You had all the breweries. Up where the old Lidl's used to be, it was the fishmonger's factory. And there's still all the shops along the main road, as we call it. But the majority of them are now fast takeaways. You've got Go-Go's, you've got Tony's Chippy, you've got Turkish Delight. You've got the White House, it used to be the pub, that was my dad's local, and it's now the White House Kitchen, and it's a local lad that runs it.
Do you think there's something that, is either missing, that you need, or that could be brought back, that you think the Craigmillar, community would benefit from?
What the community needs, especially along the main road, is a post office. We had a post office that was next to Nan's. Before that, it was I sell toys and everything when the post office closed down. And then Londis opened where St. Cuthbert used to be, and it was good, and it had a chemist in it, and it had a post office, and then it closed down, and now Polish people own it, and it is still a supermarket, but it's a lot of Polish stuff, but a lot of local people go into it. I think that's what the shops miss are shops, because it's all fast food. And we also need a post office, because the nearest post office is away down Hay Drive or Asda, and also we now didn't have a bank, and the nearest bank is Cameron Toll. So we miss a bank and we miss a post office along the Niddrie Mains Road. But I miss the shops. I love that Nan's is still there. I still use Nan's. I still pop in for my wheel. I still pop in if I just need picture books. And in Christmas time, if you're looking for ankle socks, because my daughters and grandkids day dancing, you go to Nan Cunningham's, because every other big shop sells seasonal stuff, where Nan's, you can always get ankle socks at Nan's.
You're guaranteed to get what you want.
You're guaranteed to get what at Nan's, and even if they're no there, Alan will say, oh, I'm going to get some stock, so I'll get you some, come back in 2 days and you'll have an ankle socks.
So this is the thing I hear from people. They say, well, look, shopkeepers would go out the road to get the things that you needed, and you just don't get that kind of service now.
No, you go up the fort and it's like, hey, no, we didn't have it. And also the fort didn't really employ a lot of local people for the Niddrie side. They do for the other side, but when I was a wee lassie, that was the pits. They were still the big wheel, and the side where Boots the Chemist is, that was Niddrie bricks. And they made all the bricks for the whole of Scotland. And then the other side, it was still the big pit with the wheel, and they were still getting coal out of it, but it's now all fancy shops.
Heather, thank you so much for sharing your memories of Craigmillar shops with us. Huge thanks to both Ruby and Heather for sharing their memories with us, and to staff and volunteers at Craigmillar Now for their support. Listen out for part 2 of this Craigmillar and Niddrie series of interviews, coming soon. The Away for the Messages podcasts are generously supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund Scotland. You can listen to or download all our podcasts on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes and Libsyn, or your usual podcast provider. You can follow the Living Memory Association on Facebook, or why not visit our Wee Museum of Memory and Away for the Messages exhibition at Ocean Terminal Shopping Centre, Leith, Edinburgh. Until next time, cheerio.